Today's episode is brought to you by laststitch.co. Got fabric? Got crafts? Laststitch.co is your creative hub. Repurpose unique fabric for your own projects. Sell your handmade goods or even pass on your extra fabric to other makers. It's all about saving textiles and giving them a second life. Join the sustainable crafting community at laststitch.co, where makers buy, sell, and save fabric together. Thank you so much, laststitch.co. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 287 of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals where you can strengthen your creative business, stay up to date on industry news, and build connections within our supportive trade association. Check it out at craftindustrialliance.org. Today on the show, we're talking about quilt kits with my guest, Mike Odell. Mike is a certified registered nurse anesthetist who administers anesthesia in a pediatric hospital, but his passion has always been art. He's worked with every material he's ever had a chance to get his hands on, and quilting came to the fore in 2018 when his wife took up the hobby. As his wife worked on a 9-patch quilt as her first project, Mike saw each square as a pixel, which brought him back to his youth, drawing pictures 1 pixel at a time on early home computers. Wanting to enhance his first pixel quilt, Mike discovered foundation paper piecing and saw the technique as a wonderful way to help others sew works of art. His quilt pattern and its kit company, Legit Kits, was founded to spread the feeling of accomplishment, which can only be experienced by making a masterpiece. So, Mike Odell, welcome.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm really excited about today. That's a heck of an intro. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you as well. And you're also a new Craft Industry Alliance member, and we were really excited to connect with you or with Legit Kits at Quilt Market briefly, and then and have you join. That was great. So I'd love to kind of dive into the story of this company because it's really kind of come on the scene strong and gotten lots of attention, especially recent attention when you were on Shark Tank, which we will get to. But going back to the beginning, it sounds like you've been a pretty artistic person your whole life, but where did you grow up and what were you like as a kid?
I grew up in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma City area. I liked to play soccer as a kid. I liked to be outside and run around, but anytime I was around a pencil and a piece of paper or a crayon or whatever, I was just drawing something. My daughter is exactly the same way. We just have piles of her art everywhere.
Okay.
And so I was drawn to drawing and coloring. And then, once I got older and could play with sharp stuff, I started doing wood carving, and I took classes on sculpture and pottery and glass blowing and cake decorating and, just any making stuff. Like for me, the thing that really gets my juices flowing is to take an idea and turn it into reality. I just can't get enough of that. And that's what Legit Kits is. I spent 18 months on my first large scale foundation paper piece pattern. I drew it by hand, on my dining room floor, at full scale. I got large paper from Amazon. I spread it out and I just started drawing it, and puzzling out that pattern took forever. I wasn't a quilt pattern writer when I started writing patterns. I was hardly a quilter. I'd made one. I knew how it worked. But I just used my own approach to writing foundation paper piece patterns. And our new customers tend to be a little flummoxed for the first, just getting started, and then they kind of get it after that. Because I didn't model Legit Kits after somebody else's work.
Right. You kind of developed your own way. And that seems like maybe your approach in general, sort of figuring that puzzle out is what's exciting for you.
Yeah, I'm a pretty typical guy. I will read the instructions if there's a lot of pieces to something, but I'm more of a put it together myself type of person. Now, if I go to IKEA, I take it seriously because that's nice stuff. But
right. No, I hear you. Yeah, just put it together. So I know you obviously studied to become a nurse and you work in a pretty specialized field. I mean, I think we can all agree that anesthesiology is something that needs to be taken pretty seriously, and the person who's working with you as a patient needs to be very skilled and trained. So, what made you want to do that line of work, like after high school?
Well, I changed my major a lot of times. Um, I, at first I was just going after the money. Like I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I started out an engineering major because those made the most. And then I realized I didn't want to work in a cubicle. I wanted to work with people. And so then, healthcare came into the focus, and, I'd limited myself to something that I could get a career out of with a bachelor's degree. Just
Okay.
my family's not, there's not a whole lot of people in my family that have gone to college. So, looked for bachelor's degree level stuff. And when I was doing observations for physical therapy, for one, I was bored out of my skull. I think that what they do is very important, but to sit there and go through slow exercises all day for me was just not really tripping my trigger. We went to go see a patient on the floor while I was on that rotation, and the patient experienced a medical emergency, and they were coding that patient. Getting the defibrillator out and the emergency medications, and the physical therapist put his hand on my shoulder and said, well, done with that one today. And I'm looking over my shoulder as he's dragging me away, and I wanted to be part of that team that was doing the resuscitation. And so nursing came into the forefront, and I worked as a critical care nurse for a dozen years. Amazon guys here, so we're about to get barks in the background. Maybe not. I worked as a critical care nurse for a number of years, 10 of which were traveling nurse. So I've moved all over the United States. And then the intensive care unit is a really tough place to be.
I bet.
It's not usually a happy ending with your patients. I mean, there's plenty of times it is, but there's just a whole lot of human suffering that you experience while you're doing that. And one of the positives that came out of that was I met so many people who were facing the end of their life, and I heard all their regrets. Because I'm just a kind stranger that was sitting next to them, and so many people were
Yeah.
like, "I should have took that chance. I should have gone on that trip. I shoulda, shoulda." And
Mm.
and not everybody was like that, of course, but I um I knew that I didn't want to be that kind of person. Like, and that's kind of how I've lived my life. Like, if there's something I really want to do, if there's an adventure, if there's a chance to go do something, I'm going to do it.
Mm.
And that's also how Legit Hits got started. While I was working on that pattern and crawling around on my floor, I was like, what quilter wants to spend 18 months writing a quilt pattern? They just want to sew. If I can provide them with something that they find fulfilling, then this would be a great business to get into. And so that's how I got started with it.
Right.
The first pattern, I had my colors wrong. I was going off the printed sheet of colors that you can buy. It's like a swatch card, but it's printed on fabric, and the colors are off on that thing. Not majorly, but in enough directions that it made my first quilt pattern useless, and I had to tear it up and start over again.
Oh no.
But during that process, I found some graphic design artists who could do it on computer instead of by hand on paper, and I just built the business from there.
And
When
what was the subject matter of that first quilt, the one
It
that you
was
did by
a
hand?
stormtrooper done by a graphic artist named Liam Brazier. He's out of UK. He does amazing art focused on Star Wars, and I just saw that thing and it just blew me away. It was in a technique called low poly, which is low resolution polygon, and so that means it's all straight lines, and that's how all of our quilts still are. There are no curves. I knew enough about sewing to know that curves were hard. Um, and I also knew enough about sewing to know that Y seams are no fun, and so all of our patterns are done without curves or Y seams. I got that pattern finally digitally put together, and then a woman named Kelsey uh, tested the pattern for me and gave the Stormtrooper quilt to her boyfriend, who saw it and said, "Babe, that quilt is legit." And that really struck me. That's not a sentence you normally hear. So I wanted to put legit in the name of my company. And so my wife and I were just puzzling around, like, legit quilt kits didn't roll off the tongue very well. And so we just went with the generic sounding legit kits. The website was open. So I snapped that up and I called my company Legit Kits.
Yeah, so that's a
Uh,
great story. I love it, and I love that it came from customer feedback, which is great. So, okay, so it sounds like you were working in one field of nursing, just going back to the nursing portion of your life, and
yeah.
then kind of transitioned over to doing anesthesiology. So, what made that shift, and what do you like about that? Because I think you work with like children in a pediatric setting. So tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that work and what you like about it.
So the requirements for becoming a certified registered nurse anesthetist in most schools are at least 2 years of critical care. They want you to do very well on your GRE because they're looking for people who can pass a test. The anesthesiology boards are the same boards that an anesthesiologist takes. It's the same subject matter. The pay scale is different. I work under anesthesiologists at Children's Hospital here. However, at other facilities, especially if you're in a more rural setting, a nurse is providing your anesthetic. That is the anesthesia team. And studies
Wow.
have shown that it is just as safe as an anesthesiologist. Um, there are very few relatively registered nurse anesthetists out there. Last count I saw was there are 3.2 million registered nurses in the United States, and of that number, 46,000 are CRNAs. So you have to be an RN to be a CRNA. So out of 3.2 million, 46,000 are CRNAs, which seems like a lot until you start knocking zeros off. And then you get out of every 320 nurses, 4.6 are CRNAs. So it's about a 1%er job.
Yeah.
It's highly competitive. The pay is good. You get your own chair in the operating room. You're only taking care of one patient at a time. And the appeal to me with surgery was that in the operating room, usually you have a problem and you are coming into the hospital to get it fixed. And so the story is usually a lot happier in the OR than it is in the
Mm,
ICU, or far more
right.
often. I mean, we still have it's life, right? Hospital is life on fast forward, uh, especially at the beginning and the end. That's all. A lot of that happens in the hospital. So, um, anesthesia is fun in a lot of ways. You know, I can take somebody through a very rough patch of their life, and surgery stressful. I can talk people down, and even kids, get them to calm down, get them comfortable, and then have them be surprised that it's all done. It's a rewarding job.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
but I'm 50 now. I've also discovered who I am and what really makes me tick. And the two things that I most often gravitate toward are taking risks and being creative.
Mm.
And as I said on Shark Tank, you don't want your anesthesia provider to be somebody who is comfortable with risk,
Fair point.
nor do you want them to be somebody who's highly creative. And so I don't do that in my job. But it's also why it feels like a job, and I think it always will. Um, the entire hospital's been kind of cheering me on the whole time since I started Legit Kids because I can't shut up about it. And I'm just a overweight 50-year-old straight guy. People are like, you got to go see Mike and his quilts, and to the new people, and they're usually feel like somebody's get pulled over on them because I am a smart aleck too. But when I whip out my phone and I start showing our quilts off to people, they just can't believe it. And that is
Yeah.
what's so fantastic to me is the quilters who make these things are beside themselves that they've done it. It's just so cool to be part of that.
Yeah, and I would love to talk a little bit about the subject matter of the quilt. So that first one was of a stormtrooper, and I think in some ways that's sort of representative of the overarching sort of aesthetic of legit kits, which is to say, as you said, they're low poly, they're all straight lines, but a lot of the subject matter isn't what you would maybe typically, if you're not super familiar with quilting, imagine a quilt would look like. I mean, there are things that would appeal to gamers. There's things that would appeal to people who love like D&D or cosplay. There's people, there's subject matter that would apply up that would really appeal to sort of more conventionally masculine aesthetic and just really a lot of different things. So maybe you can talk a little bit about sort of what guides your choices when it comes to choosing subject matter for the quilts.
I look at stuff I think is cool first and foremost. I have a graphic design team now for Legit Kids, and I work as the art director. So I tend to be the one to decide what is the next project to do. I started Legit Kids, so I did that Stormtrooper, and then I did a fantastic rendition of Boba Fett that was 125 colors, and it's the entire rainbow. It's another one of Liam's work. And then I spoke to an intellectual property attorney who was like, "You just can't do Disney. You
Right.
can't even give it away." And I was justifying it by like, well, everybody else is doing it, and Phantom and Stitches has all this stuff. But the attorney was like, "Look, um, Disney has unlimited legal uh, funding. You can't defend that. And yes, fandom does it now, but I mean, that could get erased in a day. You can
It's
be
no way
liable."
to, yeah, it's not a good way to build a business,
No, it's not.
because
It's not.
you want to be on that strong, solid footing from the beginning.
Yeah. So I discontinued. I mean, I didn't even sell those patterns. They were just in testing. It was devastating to do that because so
Mm,
much time and energy and money had gone into them. But, I appropriated the name Legit for my company, and it doesn't need to be done properly. I'm glad that I hold myself to a standard. Even if it's, shorthand for something that's cool. I dot my I's and cross my T's. Um, And then I started doing patterns that I could get the rights to.
hmm.
And I started out kind of mansplaining it, like what would women want to buy, And so my first few designs were stuff that had been popular sellers. Just, when you look at quilt of an animal, it tells you what it is. So I did that to begin with. And then Skulliver was a big turning point. It's a 106 color human skull that is tilted a little bit. You can see through the zygomatic arch, that cheekbone. And I did that
And it's like
because,
rainbow. It's also like rainbow.
yeah, 106 colors.
It is so cool. I'm going to put a picture of that in the show notes because it's gorgeous.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. There are a lot of skull quilts out there, but most of them are face on. It's a mirror image of both sides. And I look at CT and reconstructed MRI imagery of skulls every day, and there's so many cooler angles to it. So
Mm.
Um, I didn't do it as a macabre thing. I just did it because I'm in healthcare. And I also used the colors from elemental bismuth in it, so that's, bismuth is a metal that it's the one that grows in those cool squares. And
Oh,
it has
yeah.
this iridescent rainbow shades to it. And those are the shades that we pulled from to make Skulliver. So it's 106 colors. I got so many emails from people saying, I don't like skulls, but I bought your quilt kit because of the colors.
Oh
And
my
I'm
gosh. If
making it
I ever
anyway.
made it, my kids would go nuts if I ever made it because it's so beautiful. Yes.
It's one
And
of
it
our
really
easier
stands
ones
out.
too.
I mean, maybe I'll do it at some point. It stands out because it really does strike me as something that you wouldn't necessarily think would be a quilt. It's really quite striking. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sold better than I thought it would. And so I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do what I think, because there are plenty of men who quilt. There are plenty of men who buy legit kits, but statistically, more than 90% of my customer base is female. And so, and I kind of gravitate toward female oriented areas, right? Like I became a nurse, and now I'm into quilting, and so I'm just more comfortable around women. But with Sculliver, it was this watershed moment of, wait a minute, I don't have to do stuff that I think other people are going to think are cool. I'm just going to do stuff that I think is cool.
Mm.
And so after Sculliver came, shortly thereafter, was our Tutankhamun quilt. King Tut, old school rule. He's another big 60 by 80 inch quilt. He's got over 70 colors. There's a lot of gorgeous purples and golds in there. And with Tut, I was seeing, can I pull off metal using solid fabrics only?
Right.
And a lot of what we do is I'm just trying to challenge myself to see how far can I push foundation paper piecing? Where's the limit? Now there
Mm-hmm.
is a limit with number of pieces because I don't want people to hate me forever. We do
Or not
try.
finish, like not finish their kit, right? Because then they're not satisfied.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to be the king of UFOs.
Right.
And we do have a UFO protection plan. I you can buy it at checkout. It has to be affiliated with the kit that you're doing because otherwise, we would get a whole bunch of them. But I had people that wouldn't buy the kit until I sold them this plan. And so if you decide that your quilt kit is a UFO within the first year of purchasing it and you have the plan purchased the same time you bought it, you have to send us back everything. Your unfinished blocks, your unfinished pattern pages, all the fabric, everything. But you do that and we'll refund your original purchase price because you declared it a UFO.
Wow.
And there's people who really want to finish those things in our Facebook group. So I can just flip it over and it'll get done.
That's actually very unique. That's so interesting. It's like somehow looking at it, the project seems very ambitious. And so knowing that there's a way to sort of backtrack and be fully reimbursed gives people that courage to try it.
Yeah. And if buying that plan makes you feel more comfortable in doing it, then go for it. And I hope that you finish your quilt anyway. That's what we go for. We also have an enough fabric guarantee for that same reason. If anything happens to a piece of your fabric, if your dog eats it, if you spill wine on it, we've had all kinds of people with they tell we don't need this story. Just tell us what you're missing, and we'll send you another piece in the mail. If it's a bigger cut, it'll be a fat quarter. If it's smaller than that, then it'll be around that size of fabric that you got, probably cut from the same bolt that your kit was cut from, because we cut everything in house, and we like to help people. I would hate for somebody to not finish something just because they lost a fabric or to put something in that doesn't work. So we're really interested in people finishing these things, because when they finish them, they're going to have to make another one, and they're going to show everybody they
Absolutely.
know.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
we've got the fabric laying around. So yeah, I love when people use our enough fabric guarantee. And that's not an extra charge like the UFO protection plan. That just comes with buying a full kit from us.
I want to take a minute now to talk with our sponsor, Catherine from LastStitch.co.
My name is Catherine Gaynor, and my company is LastStitch.co.
And what is Last Stitch?
Last Stitch is an online platform where people who have leftover surplus fabric can post it, and people who want leftover fabric can pick it up. Essentially, I've created a website to help circulate pre-consumer textile waste.
And what made you want to do this? Such an interesting concept.
Thank you. I was watching an article on Facebook about pre-consumer textile waste. I saw how much waste there was, and I thought there's got to be a better way for mankind to distribute the waste. And I thought to myself, there was just a way where people could go to get the textile waste, then people could pick up the textile waste. And I thought, well, why not just create that? And then I thought, as a way in order to help circulate it is to build in a marketplace where people could either use the fabric for their own use, or they can repurpose the product and then sell it as either a craft or a product, home good. And then that could be listed in the marketplace. And then that way, it's a way for the textile waste to be, funneled and moved over and, turned into something better.
And where does all this textile waste come from generally?
So right now it's coming from a combination of individuals. There is a gentleman who has a textile mill, another gentleman who has a manufacturing company, a lot of individuals just have personal stock that they're crafters or seamstresses, and they just have, more than they use and they wanted to stash it. That's something else that they can do here as well.
Is it huge quantities or is it like small enough for a home crafter? What does that look like?
It's scalable. So there are 3 sections within the website. The first section is for bulk fabric, so large quantities that can be posted there. The second section is meant for smaller quantities. So individuals who have smaller quantities or who have rolls of bolts of fabric that they want to sell by the yard, they can sell it there. And then the third section is for products created from the fabric from both section 1 and 2. So depending on what you have or what you want is going to determine what section you want to go to.
This sounds great. And I feel like with Joanne going away, this is another awesome resource for folks who are looking to get fabric that maybe they can't find elsewhere. So tell us, Catherine, where we can go to check it out.
Sure. So the website is laststitch.co.
Thank you so much, laststitch.co. And now back to the show. All right, so you made this I'm going back to your Stormtrooper quilt. So you made that one. So I mean, there's a lot of people out there who would say, "Look, I work hard all week. I have a full-time job. I've discovered through my wife that I really enjoy quilting. I'm designing some patterns. They are super cool. I'm giving them to my friends. I don't need to start a business and have another job. You know what I mean? I just am going to do this as a way to relax, to have some satisfaction, make things with my hands, return to that love that I've always had." So what was it about it that made you feel like, oh, no, actually, I need to start another full-time job? Because I'm imagining, even if you're not working in it full-time, running Legit Kits is a huge job. So, so what made you think, okay, no, this is actually a business and I want to do that too?
As I was drawing that first pattern, it just took over. I just knew I needed to do it. There was so much out there that I felt like could be done in that space. And back when I was at about design number 7, I looked at my wife and said, "I want to do 100 patterns." And she said, "Why would you want to do that?" And I said, "Because nobody else has." And that's kind of what Legit Kits is too. Like, there are definitely other pattern designers out there. And there are some really good ones out there.
Yeah.
But I saw a huge opportunity in elevating the craft of foundation paper piecing to an art. And I think that some other designers have done that as well. I don't think that I'm completely unique, but the difference between art and craft is emotion. So both art and craft require skill to make. The differentiating factor is that art causes an emotional response in the viewer. And I throw away so many designs. They just don't all work with our format. They end up being too technical, or it just doesn't look right. We're also constrained by how many shades of fabric we can use, because I just do solids. I do solids because there's no wrong side. I do solids because you have good reproducibility in the imagery that you're trying to make. There's a lot of push for me to go to batiks. I think batiks are cool, but I also think that if you're doing a eyeball for one of our designs and it has 15 different shades of fabric to make this small piece, and you cut the wrong part out of your batik, your eye's going to wash out. It's not going to look right.
Right.
And so I like the fact that solids adds some form of control to it. And you're sewing in the late wee hours and you get something that's one-sided fabric, you're going to get something wrong side up at some point. I don't do prints because they're directional. It's all just solids and just that restricted area. But so often I send art back because it just doesn't hit me in the chest. Like, I won't let it go through unless I'm like, that is cool. And I usually will surprise people that that kind of know me, I'll just pull my phone up and just hold it up to them and look for their response.
Right.
And if their eyes get big and they suck in and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, okay, hey, we're on something now. Yeah, good. That's how I feel too. But, thanks for testing with me.
Yeah,
Um,
you want something that's remarkable. Like when I was at Quilt Market and I walked by your booth, you had, and I don't know the name of it, but it's like it's a giant dragon.
yeah.
Yes. And so I walked by it and I was like, I have to stop and take a picture and send it to two of my three kids are like D&D obsessed. So I was like, I got to take a picture and send it to them and they loved it. So you want that one that makes people stop in their tracks and have to take a picture.
Yes. And that one's Toasty the Dragon. And Toasty actually um, was another challenge I'd issued to myself. Can I pull off fire with solid colors? I could pull off metal. Can I do fire? And I think that we did a good job with that. I'm quite impressed with how that fire looks. There's photos of me. I'm living in Oklahoma, and I'm in a giant field with all this brown grass around me, and I'm holding Toasty to take photos, but the wind had pushed it down to the ground, and it looks like I'm standing over a grass fire and I'm trying to put it out with something because the colors pop so well.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
and we have another fire based quilt coming out very soon. It's our firefighter quilt,
Oh, wow.
and it is a firefighter in full gear walking toward you, carrying a crowbar and an axe, and there is fire raging all around. And it's our most complex quilt that we've done so far. It's 2,700 pieces.
Wow.
And it's a shocker. It's
Yeah.
good
Okay.
stuff.
So we'll keep our eyes out for that. So you mentioned that you use all solids and you use Kona cotton, which is made by Robert Kaufman. And so how did you sell? I mean, there's almost every quilting fabric company has a whole full line of solids and they have a different hand, a different like thread count, different shades. And but they're all solids. They're not, batiks or something else. So how did you decide on Kona, and what do you like about that in particular?
I decided Kona because I found it at Jo-Ann Fabrics down the road from my street back when I was starting Legit Kits. They had a decent array of colors. And then when I looked it up back in the day, because I started doing this in 2018, I didn't launch Legit till 2020, but back in the day, Kona had far more shades than anyone else. And
Mm,
I do have that computer background. And Legit is that computer background pops into Legit in a couple of ways, one of which is the graphics cards that we had. So I grew up in the 80s. Our first graphics card was a CGA card, color graphic adapter, and it had 4 colors, 2 of which were black and white. And then we upgraded our computer to an EGA card that had 16 shades. And with that, you could get some realistic looking pictures, not detailed, of course, but realistic looking. And then we went VGA, and it had 256 colors. And that was when video games started to come alive. That's when the drawings that I did with just pixel by pixel started to really pop. And so most quilt kits come with about 16 colors. Most quilts are EGA graphics because that's about the number of colors you could pick out in an outing to a fabric store. So I was like, how about we take quilts VGA? Let's use, because Kaufman has
mm,
365 shades. So I loved that they had so many colors, and also they were one of the longest lasting fabric manufacturers out there. So I'm like, we got this big stable company that has a whole lot of colors, and changing fabric lines is an incredibly expensive
yeah.
endeavor. Like to get all 365 shades of Kona back before they raised prices, it was $22,000.
Wow.
We just bought them, starting out, I was building these kits with retail fabric, buying a fat quarter here and a half a yard of that. And, the first $600 fabric purchase I made, was a pretty big deal, in
Sure.
my household. And I was like, look, we'll use it. I'm going to build these quilt kits and it'll be all right. And we have since then.
Yeah.
But it starting out was bumpy. because I had to
Yeah.
pay retail for the fabric. And then I launched in 2020 during COVID. Everybody bought all the fabric. Uh, it was a guerrilla style starting a business, but it worked.
And did you have to take out any loans or get any sort of, investment from friends and family or anything like that? Or have you just kind of been bootstrapping this from the start? Because as you
Um,
said, it's a lot of expense in this at the beginning, before you get your name
oh
out there
yeah.
and
Oh
get a
yeah.
bunch of accounts and things like that. Yeah.
It started when I sold a house and I was
Okay.
um, looking to put that money back to work. I was looking to buy another house and real estate had shot up and I couldn't see anything I really wanted to get into. And I had met a serial entrepreneur through real estate and told him about the quilt patterns I was working on and, um, how I'd made a deal with an artist and, was looking at royalty payments and stuff. And so we sat down at his computer in his office and just started looking around. And he's like, man, there's nothing out there like what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Uh-huh.
That's why I'm doing it. And he's like, no, but let's take a bigger look at all this. And so, he'd started multiple businesses and he coached me in starting this one. So
Nice.
I used those proceeds and then I took out, I had a credit card that would do 0% interest on a cash advance. And so I just wrote the maximum check out of that credit card and I was like, I'll get the money back. And it was 30% if you don't pay it back on time. So it gave me a little pressure to get things off the ground. I still have to borrow money on occasion with legit just to, new release is a little further out and we've got to pay for all these quilt shows and, you got to pay for those booths and rent hotel rooms and flights and all that stuff before it happens. So there's a lot of money moving around now. It's
Yeah, it's a good thing that you have it sounds like a pretty high risk tolerance because I think,
yeah, yeah,
not everybody's cut out for that kind of, you like, well, I'll take a bet and this will probably work. And, and I'm sure things don't always work. And then, you have to figure it out. So that's good that I think entrepreneurhood can be hard and is best for
yeah, it
people who
can.
have some risk tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, now I have
Um,
seven full-time employees. We've got 4 people cutting fabric full time. We have a person who does printing and shipping, and there's an office manager that Laurette makes sure that we have everything we need. And then I've got a 2-person sales crew on top of that goes and they did 25 quilt shows last year.
wow.
So it's quite the operation.
Yeah, that's completely true. And I wanted to talk a little bit about pricing. So, I think some people might think, oh, a craft kit, it's going to be $30. You know what I'm saying? Because that's maybe what you have in your mind's eye for some reason. But your
Right.
kits are several $100s a piece, some of them $419, for example. So, I mean, they make a big quilt. It's a bed-size quilt. I think most of them look to be 60 by 80 inches. So they're big, but still, it's several $100s for a kit. So that does explain a little bit about that, that insurance plan people are interested in is the pricing. But do people ever sort of bulk when they see the price? And how do you talk to them about that?
Plenty of people do. I wanted to make the best. I wanted this to be like the definitive opus piece that you make. And so, we do our best to keep pricing down as much as possible. But I also feel like my employees should be paid a fair wage. So I pay middle class wages to my employees. And I think that the United States needs to get its middle class back, and I'm doing my little part to help that happen. We have some, like, I'm offering medical insurance and we're looking at getting retirement accounts this year. And that does figure into the overhead, but also you're getting so much more fabric than you're used to when you buy legit kits. Paper piecing definitely uses quite a lot of fabric, but also we want people to have plenty to do their project. So with most kits, you get about twice the amount of fabric that you need to complete the quilt so that you have plenty to work with and you're not just trying to bootstrap your fabric.
Yeah.
It is a luxury experience. We have the enough fabric guarantee. And, for people who are a bit more budget conscious, we also have a block of the month program. It's still kind of in its infancy, but you can sign up for a subscription and get a part of the quilt mailed to you every month instead of paying for the whole thing. And that actually appeals to a lot of people because it's smaller bites of the big project as well. So you get smaller installations. We will be launching some simpler kits. I want to be able to get stuff in fabric stores, and I can't bring us to raise our prices any higher in order to make wholesaling worthwhile. Like if I was to actually wholesale at 50% of MSRP and still turn a profit with my company, our kits would have to go up another couple $100, and I just don't know that would sell at a quilt shop. And I also don't want to just price gouge anyway. So we're going to do some simpler kits for quilt shops to allow people to try legit kits who wouldn't necessarily otherwise, just because it is expensive relatively.
And are you not doing wholesale now?
We are wholesaling patterns. So we will wholesale patterns to quilt shops, and they're welcome to kit them.
Okay.
And then we also sell fabric packs. So if you buy your pattern at a quilt shop and then you decide, you know what, finding all 180 of these fabrics is turning out to be something that's going to take me half a year and cost 3 times what a full kit should have cost. So we also sell fabric packs, and those are priced to cost the same if you buy a pattern and then the fabric pack as if you bought the whole kit. So if you buy a pattern from someplace else and then decide you want the fabric, you can go to our website and get a fabric pack.
And it can also serve as replenishment, right? So if you made, if you made the Egyptian quilt for your nephew and then at the birthday party, he opened it and his friend wants one too, you can make it again with the same pattern, just buying the fabric pack.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes sense. And I would love to hear a little bit about Shark Tank because, I was Googling you in advance of this interview, and since you just did the Shark Tank episode, it's not surprising, but it's like striking how much press it generates. Like so many of the links. I mean, like pages of Google were devoted to, nurse anesthetist goes on Shark Tank, which is like one after another of these publications. So it must be just so good for getting the word out about the company. I don't know if that was your motivation or you had other motivations, but whatever you can tell us about the experience, I would love to hear.
The first time I saw Shark Tank, I imagined myself on there.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't think it would actually happen. But I don't know. I just always thought it would be neat. But I didn't actually think legit would work for Shark Tank because legit is a niche of a niche. Of quilters, only a certain number of them like foundation paper piecing. So
right.
I was like, is this actually something that they would go for? Because Shark Tank tends to go for more. The sharks tend to go for more of a ubiquitous, everybody can buy it type of product. The Scrub Daddy or whatever.
Yes.
So I'd kind of written it off, and then the I don't know what numbereth person he was. 100th, 200th, 1000th person was just like, man, you should try and get on Shark Tank. And it was at the hospital, and I was sending him for a lunch break. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that or not. I kind of like owning 100% of my company. And then he was like, oh, how hard can it be to apply? And he pulled up their website, and it just had 10 questions. And I was like,
all right.
Actually, I have really good answers for those. Why don't you just go to lunch? And so I sent him to lunch, and he came back, and I showed him the email that said, here you go. You applied. But the email also says over 10,000 people apply to get on this show every year.
Wow.
And when I looked further, I found their 2023 numbers, over 40,000 people had applied to get on that show. and about 100
Wow.
make it to TV. So the odds are not good.
Right.
Don't bank on getting onto Shark Tank, but I had an interesting product. I had a business that's actually profitable and working. And I knew that I had really strikingly appealing visuals for
You
that
do.
show. So
Yes.
it just kind of happened. I didn't hear anything for a long time, and then I started the process with them. I'm sure that massive numbers of people got eliminated, and part of it was just luck, but they also are looking for people who are going to be good on TV. There's a whole lot of interviews and stuff to get on that show.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So you're kind of like, you have an outgoing personality, a very like warm personality. And I think you strike me as somebody who kind of likes to be the storyteller. So maybe that was part of what they were looking for too.
yeah, and I started watching it a lot more earnestly as the process went on. And it was strange to me that all these people knew about, they were like, oh man, you're my favorite shark. And I'm like, how do you know
Right.
that this is your favorite person? And just to get on a tangent, because I'm good at that, I wrote a book several years ago about real estate and in my local area. And several people had given my book to their spouse. So anesthesia providers, their spouse wants to get into buying rental properties or whatever. And so I gave them a free copy of my book. And those same, we would be at like a party 6 months later, and this person I'd never met before came up to me, and it was like they were my best friend. And it was because they read my book. They heard my story. They went on these adventures with me in the book. And so as time drew closer to, I might just get on this show, a light bulb went off. And I was like, wait, all the sharks probably have books. So I started listening to all their audiobooks.
Oh, that
And
was smart.
I got
Yeah.
to know them all. You get to hear
And that's how
about,
you have a favorite shark.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
it's exactly how you get to have a favorite shark. So I got to know them all. In their books, they tell you about their failures, their successes, and every one of the people who's on Shark Tank, none of them were like trust fund babies. They all, bootstrapped it to begin with, and so all of them were in the same place as me. At some point in their life. And so I actually felt like I belonged on that set by the time it was time for me to get on there.
Yeah, that's smart
Um,
because you kind of feel comfortable and realize that everybody here is just a person and just like me,
yeah,
who's gone through various trials and travails of being an entrepreneur.
yeah. The worst moment for me though was I was on the set and they were touching up my makeup, and I was having some very light conversation with a guy backstage, and they announced overhead 1 minute, 8 seconds till doors open.
Ah,
And those were the doors that I was standing on the other side of. And my heart fell out of my chest
oh my
when they
gosh.
said that. And I actually asked myself silently, where did I go wrong in my life to end up here right now? This is the craziest thing ever. But
But you're used to being under pressure. I mean, in the operating room for all of those years. And,
yeah,
there's a lot of pressure. I mean, it's literally life and this was not life and death, literally life and death in those situations. So I feel
yeah.
like you have, the ability to say, like, regulate yourself and be like clear headed in those stressful moments.
I'm glad they didn't open the doors by surprise. I had that minute, 8 seconds to right myself because they start counting down
Right.
at 8. And by the time the doors swung open, I had been able to, go 180 degrees and mentally pick myself back up. And I mean, the doors were open. It was time to go. So, it was terrifying, but exhilarating at the same time. And then, once I got them laughing during my pitch, at that point I was working a crowd. I still needed to know my stuff. They asked a lot of hard questions. I had a lot of poignant answers for them. And there's a lot of stuff that was discussed that I wish had made it to television, but it didn't. And that's just the nature of TV.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
was the experience of a lifetime. I got flown to Los Angeles by a Hollywood studio and put up in a nice hotel and,
Wow.
hair and makeup and the whole thing, and met famous people on national television. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was
Yeah.
fantastic.
That's great. And can you talk a little bit about like the upshot? Like, I don't know if you can say anything about sort of like the deal or no deal or whatever, but sort of what happened at the end.
Yeah. So in the episode, I shook Mr. Wonderful's hand, and that was the beginning of negotiations between my company and Kevin O'Leary's company. Several months went by with us exchanging information, and then ultimately we ended up not being able to form an agreement. So, it was an amazing experience, and as much as I would like to have made a deal, my business comes first, and I had to make the right call that I saw for my business at the time, and so
Yeah.
It opened so many doors. It's been incredible. It's pretty humbling to have so many quilters respond to what I said during the intro. Basically, I mean, I'd already done my pitch, but I was just telling the sharks what I thought, which is that a quilt is, if you pass anything down to your, to your progeny, the thing that's going to last the longest is a quilt. And the thing that really made me think about that was I was just looking for content, and I looked up what's the oldest quilt, and this information for the Tristan quilt came up in front of me. And it is a quilt that is, I believe it is in a museum in Italy. It is over 600 years old.
Oh my gosh.
The color is all washed out. It's still mostly intact. It's just kind of bleach white. And it was made at the same time the Canterbury Tales were being written. It has some trapunto in it, and you can still tell that there's some vignettes from an old story in it. And the consensus among the experts who have analyzed it is that it was given as a wedding gift.
Yeah.
So not much has changed over time with quilts. And
Right.
and just thinking about, we have modern fabrics with modern dyes in them now, and sewing machines that are going to throw way more stitches in than a hand sewn quilt out of what people came up with back in the day. So how long are these going to last? Like, it's pretty humbling to think that hundreds of years from now, some of these quilts are still going to be there. That's pretty cool.
No, that's great. Yeah. And it's so motivating and makes you really feel like the work that you're doing is worthwhile. So I love that story. Thank you for telling us about Shark Tank. And I want to make sure we get to your recommendation list before we run out of time. So your first one is a paint by numbers kit of the National Park poster of Mount Rainier.
Yeah. Yep. That's a fun project. Nice to get into painting again. And I've done a lot of paintings, and that paint by number is fun. I'm having to use a magnifying glass to see some of the numbers just because I haven't found a pair of glasses I like. But
well, you might want to check out Elle Cray. We had Rachel on the podcast a while back, and she's a fellow craft kit company person, but all of her craft kits are paint by number kits. And it's sort of similar. Maybe you guys can have a chat at some point. I'm happy to connect you with her. But if you like paint by number, I'm sure she'd love to send you something. So,
well, I would love to talk to her. That sounds
all right.
great.
I'm going to make you guys a connection after
All
this
right,
is over.
sweet.
That's great. And then working with your son on his pine card derby racer for Cub Scouts. That sounds really fun.
Yeah. And I, unfortunately, last year, it wasn't a rule, so I didn't see any reason to limit it. But they've made a new rule that can only weigh so much in the Outlaw League. So prior to our lead car entering the race, I found a lead ingot that was the same dimensions as a pine car, and I spray painted it, and then scratched what looked like wood grain in it. And it was pretty funny to see the official go to pick it up and it not move off the table, because instead of 5 ounces, it weighed 5 pounds. So that car was 80 times heavier than it was supposed to be.
Oops.
And it didn't win, but it made an impression, so to speak. And they now have a rule that we can't do that anymore. So we're making this one out of wood, and he wanted a pencil eraser, so it's aerodynamic. So yeah, that's one of the projects, and we race it in a couple of weeks.
That sounds so fun. I would love to have that challenge. I didn't have any Cub Scouts in my family, but that sounds like a really good project to work on with your kids. And I think, those are the kinds of things that kids really remember, like later.
Yeah.
I have teenagers and kids in their 20s now. And so when they look back, they remember all of these, insane projects that we did when they were little. So yeah.
Super fun.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. It was great talking to you.
Well, thank you for having me, Abby. I'm so glad to be part of this community. It's so cool.
And you've been listening to the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today's episode was brought to you by LastStitch.co. Got fabric? Got crafts? LastStitch.co is your creative hub. Repurpose unique fabric for your own projects. Sell your handmade goods or even pass on your extra fabric to other makers. It's all about saving textiles and giving them a second life. Join the sustainable crafting community at LastStitch.co, where makers buy, sell, and save fabric together. Thank you so much, LastStitch.co. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals. When you become a member of Craft Industry Alliance, you get in-depth coverage of craft industry news, the opportunity to connect with fellow professionals for advice and support, and access to an educational library filled with ideas, tools, and resources to help you as you build your business. Join us at craftindustryalliance.org. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.